Hey folks, welcome to my Captain Toad Treasure Tracker commentary. These commentaries are going to be very in-depth, so if you haven't played Captain Toad Treasure Tracker for the Wii U, I suggest you do that. If you haven't, you can still watch on. I'll be avoiding spoilers before they happen, but consider this your warning or disclosure, I guess. Either way, we started on the Wii U title screen because the game doesn't boot up right to a title screen like most other games would. Instead, it boots you right into this introductory level, because that's it. It's just, here we go. And a lot of games don't do this, but I find it really, really interesting when they do, because there's a very specific reason why they chose to do that. And here, I think it's actually for story reasons, but I'll say why in a second. The main thing about Captain Toad is it's a puzzle platformer, but without the platforming. The reasoning being is that Captain Toad can't jump because his backpack is too heavy, and he's got some important tools back there, so I mean, can't take that off. We don't know what those tools are, because I don't think he ever pulls anything out of that backpack during the whole game. But, you know, so many games nowadays just take ages to open up. Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy are guilty of this, so even other games in the same series are guilty of this problem. But yet, this game just starts up to gameplay right away. There's zero boot time to get into the actual meat of the game, which is really neat. Toadette here is leading us around, and this is very important for her to be here, because the game focuses heavily on its camera. Instead of, say, Super Mario 3D World or other games like that, which have a very specific camera location, it's all you really need, and while you can make minor adjustments, it doesn't really matter. Here, the camera is so important. And it's very interesting, really, because in 3D World, this game was inspired from some mini-games in Super Mario 3D World, and we'll come back to that in a second, but it's very interesting to think about where all of this inspiration came from. And with that, our plot has been established. It's not very complicated, but that's all we really need. Toadette, our good friend, not a damsel, I must stress. She's not a stereotypical damsel, because they have no romantic implications whatsoever. Assuming Captain Toad's actually the same Toad from Mario Kart Double Dash, they're actually siblings. And some Mario developers have even said that romantic interest isn't even possible for Toads because they reproduce asexually. Because they're mushrooms. So that makes sense. But hey, family-friendly game, so let's move on. Either way, the level select here, it's a storybook, because we're telling a story. So it's very, very interesting. Every level has 3 gems to collect and a secondary mission. I'm going to try and get everything in one go, but it isn't always possible. But this level here is the first level, and it's a very perfect first level, because just like our introduction there, it does force us to use the camera. We can't even go forward without rotating the camera a little bit, and our very first collectible requires us to use the camera in order to understand how to get that first gem. And it just does all of these things so quickly and so well. I can't stress how well it works. Either way, vegetables are our main weapon here, which is very interesting because it takes inspiration from Super Mario Bros. 2. We're going to see it right here. So we throw it at a POW block, another thing that originally started in Super Mario Bros. 2. However, it's been in other Mario games also, so that's less of a connection. And that's going to block off our second gem. But yeah, vegetables are the main thing, but obviously we have our collectibles, we have some power-ups, there is the super mushroom, so if we get hit, then we're going to shrink into tiny Captain Toad, but if we get a mushroom, then we'll grow back to be big Captain Toad, which is really kind of sick when you think about it. I mean, like, Captain Toad's eating mushrooms, it's kind of gross. But we also have this axe here, which it takes inspiration actually from Donkey Kong because of the music there, but it'll be able to let us break through blocks and just destroy a whole bunch of vegetables all at once. A lot of the plucks actually have coins or other things instead of just vegetables, so even if you don't want to kill an enemy, it's ideal to pluck these things because a lot of times they just have coins like these two guys here that I missed. So that's pretty much how the game's set up, and it's really neat. I should also point out the sign here, and I don't remember what I actually zoomed in to show it off, but there's actually hidden little secrets in the game, is the best way to put it. If you look on the signpost here, yeah, here it is, you can see there's a little hidden 8-bit Luigi. And this was a joke that carried on, actually, from 2013, which was the year of Luigi. And Super Mario 3D World had hidden Luigis because it was in 2013, and then New Super Luigi U, the DLC for New Super Mario U, also had hidden Luigis as well. So this is kind of a carried joke, but it's really charming. Just look at that, because all the other Toads are just there chilling, and the second you just hang out with him, he's like, "Yay!" And it's like, "Wow, I'm so excited to keep playing." I don't even know. It's just so charming. And the theme song is also a remix of the Captain Toad theme from Mario Galaxy, and I really don't like that song. It's really obnoxious and just hard to listen to, but because, you know, Captain Toad has to be likable and cute now, they also adapted the theme to do that, which is really nice. Our second objective was to collect that gold mushroom, and I didn't really point it out when we got it, but the objectives can be something as simple as just finding one little hidden collectible, but it can also be something like reaching a coin limit, or, I don't know, not killing any enemies, or maybe killing all the enemies. It really depends. Now right here they're talking about amiibo support, which is something I'm not going to be doing because I do not have a Toad amiibo, but it's very underwhelming from what I've seen of it. It doesn't even really affect the game, it just has little 8-bit Toads, kind of like the 8-bit Luigis I was talking about. So it really doesn't do much interesting, and for amiibo support, it's pretty bad, honestly. It was added in later once the Mario Party 10 series amiibo, well, I guess it's just the Mario series, but it came out with Mario Party 10 anyway. So this level's neat. All of them are neat. But if you walk over this crack over here, the bridge will break. Which we don't want to do because that's our secondary objective. So, yeah, see the bridge break. So, we're going to not do that. We're going to exit the course, we're going to restart, we're not going to break the bridge, because there's another way to get down, and we can get down. But the idea is that, hey, the coins lead you right over that, and it's going to drop you down and surprise you. Whoa, this is a crazy, charming game or something. So we're not going to do that. We're going to get as many coins as we can, because who doesn't like coins? But we're actually going to drop right behind where we started, and it drops us down here. Now these are some new enemies. They shuffle back and forth. They're really, I mean, dare I say, cute. Just the little way the eyes shift while they move around. It's really neat. Either way, that's them. But this level also introduces moving platforms, which we haven't seen before. These guys rotate around, and if you fall off of them, you don't die or anything. You just fall into the water. But it's a puzzle platformer, so while death is very prevalent in this game, it's much less of a concern. It's not the main issue. The main issue is solving the puzzles and trying to get to the end. Where Mario, the only thing in your way is death and enemies. Here, it's not just that. It's about trying to mentally figure some of these puzzles out. Which, obviously, I mean, puzzle platformer makes sense. Although there isn't even the platforming part, so maybe you just call it a puzzle game. But, I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's a really neat idea, is the way to put it. Either way, the second gem is over there, hidden away, and if the area is actually blocked off, so the only way you can see it is by rotating the camera. So it just keeps pushing this camera at you, which is really neat, which is really good to do that. And also, I should mention the structure. We had the horizontal rotating platforms, but now we have the vertical rotating platforms. And these little circular rotating guys, we see a lot throughout the game, so it's introducing the concept now, so that way later on it won't come as a surprise when we need to learn something else. So it's trying to teach us the bare bones of the game, and that's pretty much what the first world of most games do. But these first few levels really do that. So, I mean, our first level just introduces the camera a bit more and taught us about moving around and plucking things and blah, blah, blah. This one's introducing us to moving platforms, and we're going to see that the next level introduces another new concept. But either way, as I mentioned before, the game is just kind of floating cuboids. They aren't really focused on establishing a world. And here we can see that because this is a completely different setting from the first level, and I can tell you right now that the next level is going to be a completely different setting from the previous level. So, it kind of jumps all over the place, but unlike Mario 3D World, which had an overworld with, like, the desert world, which didn't even have many desert levels, or the ice world that didn't even have many ice levels, that problem doesn't exist here because our overworld is just us telling a story, so we can just assume that there was some sort of traveling in between, but we have to suspend our disbelief, obviously, because we're talking about floating cuboids here. So once again, Complete scenery change, just like I said. Much more drastic than the last level, but much more peaceful. I don't even know where this is. It could be like space. It's hard to tell. It's just like little patterns underneath, but that's not the point. We introduced a new concept here, these touchstones, which when you touch them, they move around. But either way, we can't get everything this time, because our secondary objective is to clear this level with only 3 touches of the gamepad. So I'm actually going to quit the level and come back in, and we're going to do that challenge first. And then we're going to come back and get all the collectibles. I really like this puzzle, actually, because it really, once again, hams in the camera, because you need to know, like, which one's the touch, and you need to understand where all these platforms are moving. So the blue one moves up and down, but the pink one moves left and right. So you need to figure out how all that works and which platform you need to be on, and then what platform you need to touch. So it's a lot more thinking beforehand, which is something that we haven't seen in the game yet, anyway. But it's really neat. And I also like, I should also mention, I mean, I'm a music guy. I like the peaceful music here because it's a peaceful environment. Obviously, a complete change from the one before, but it's still very, very good based on the setting. So, I mean, the second song was a bit more uplifting and adventurous than the first one, because of the fact that it was a different kind of area that had more enemies, a bit more challenging than the first one, where this one doesn't have any enemies, very peaceful, and it's much more about thinking back and, you know, taking the time to really figure out what platforms you need to touch. Very different puzzle, obviously. Very different environments, that's how it works. But I do want to go into detail about this, because this game derived from a mini-game in Super Mario 3D World, and it's interesting that a game that relies so heavily on its camera originated from a game that didn't really require the camera at all, like I was saying before. So I'm wondering why this started in 3D World, and there's actually a few possibilities. This was originally pitched as a Zelda game, and the reason why is because in most Zelda games, Link can't jump, other than in 3D games when you can just run off of the platform and jump from there. So the idea is this is going to be a Zelda spin-off, kind of. But Miyamoto didn't like that, because he didn't think it fit well for Zelda. So the idea was pitched to make it Captain Toad from the Galaxy games, and then use his backpack as the excuse as to why he can't jump. And my guess is really that in 3D World, that was the sales pitch for this game. So the game was already being thought up, but they had to sell it to the executives because they want to make money, obviously. They're like, you know, they're not just here to make fun games as much as they like to make us think that. So in 3D World, that was the sales pitch, and then because 3D World sold somewhat well, you know, not as well as the other 3D Marios, but sold somewhat well for their not very well-selling system, and fans really liked Captain Toad, those Captain Toad levels, and there were even some fans that were saying, hey, let's have a Captain Toad game. Well, they're already developing the Captain Toad game, so it's all good. So yeah, it's really interesting how that got all developed. But either way, we have the game now, and it's debatably just as good as 3D World, and I really like 3D World, so hey. Either way, now it's time for our 4th level, Mushroom Mesa. I haven't really mentioned the titles of these levels, but they're kind of just added in later on. They didn't really have titles in Mario levels until New Super Mario Bros. U anyway, so it's interesting that they're really focusing on titling levels now when they didn't do that before. But really, the titles don't really matter as much. I think it adds a little bit of charm, but it's not something that you really remember a lot of the time, so it's kind of hard to say. Either way, it's here. Can't really complain about it. But as you can see, if you look in the corner there, you'll see that those touchstones from the previous level are back. And now they're in a level that has enemies in it and a bunch of other mechanics that we've seen before, especially emphasizing the camera, as we have to walk around here to get our collectibles. So it's mixing all these mechanics together now, and now it's like, okay, well, you know, you've introduced all these mechanics, now I gotta play the game, you know? And it's gonna do this again with more mechanics that are introduced later on in this, this first area, if you will. But either way, there's Shy Guys in this level, and, yeah, there's Shy Guys in the level, so it's my guess that the Shy Guys were the first enemies that they made in this game. And the reason why I say that is because they've worked so well with Captain Toad, because it's if they see you, then they come running at you, and you have to find some way to counter back at them, and that's when they developed probably the vegetables to throw back, because the vegetables weren't in 3D World at all, and frankly, there weren't really many enemies in the 3D World levels either, so I guess that makes sense, but this game draws heavily from Super Mario Bros. 2, and I know people said that 3D World itself drew inspiration from Mario 2, but I feel like this game is the one that really did it, more so than any other. So, I don't really know all of where the inspiration came from, obviously, but yeah, I would like to think that 3D World, they took some inspiration from Mario 2, but they're like, let's go a bit further when we make this new Captain Toad game, especially since Captain Toad can't jump on enemies, so we need to come up with some other method anyway. And it's really hard to say, and because of all of those things combined, it really does stand out as its own thing. I should mention that our secondary objective is to kill all the enemies, but I kind of missed, because the flying enemies, when they are above you, then they crush down, so it's the only time you really get to hit them, except for the one earlier where you could throw a vegetable at them from the top platform, which is I think it's the easier way, but either way, we have to go back and get it, so we'll cut back over to us hitting him. Now that we did that, we can go get our 1-up, we can go back up, and win. Isn't that fantabulous? I find it fantabulous, if I do say so. And it's also a little clear star. I don't know whether I guess it's just made out of glass, so I'd be careful with that. I guess holding a glass star in your backpack might weigh you down a little bit. So maybe after level 4, then maybe we have a reasonable excuse. I don't know. It's hard to say where he actually keeps those stars, but it's also hard to say where Mario keeps all those stars in all of the exploration-based 3D Mario, so I guess it's not worth deliberating over. Either way, our last power-up, actually, not first. I don't know, because there's the Fire Flower and stuff like that. You don't see those in this game, so I guess this is the first, like, real power-up, I guess you could say, but it's also the only one, the Double Cherry. And really, it probably fits better here than it did in 3D World because of all the puzzle opportunities it provides. Because in 3D World, yeah, there was the challenge of not getting hit because there's enemies, but it's not like there was any sort of reason to have more than one other than the green star's hidden behind this arbitrary barrier that requires 2 guys. But here, there's much more puzzles you can do with it, like this one here, which has you run around the hedge maze with both of them, and you need to hit both P-switches at the same time. And the P-switches aren't like other Mario games where you hit them and then blocks, coins turn into blocks, blocks turn into coins. That isn't really how it works. They just threw a P on it, I guess, because why not? Why not make that reference? But there really is no association with the other P-switches that we've seen. Either way, we need to navigate both of them to hit both switches at the same time in order to open up the next area. So it teaches us to move the toads, basically just run them into walls, pretty much, so that way the other one can move to where it needs to. So, as an example, right now we're in the hedge area, so we can move the toad down into the lower hedge area and then run the other toad against the wall to get the other toad. I'm confusing you probably, but you get the point. So, anyway, we're going to drop down into this next area back here. And just like level 3, really, this introduces the Double Cherry in a very passive environment where we don't have many enemies and we can understand how the mechanic works. That way in later levels, when we do have the Double Cherry in an area that has more enemies, then we know how it works. Unlike the touchstones, though, it doesn't immediately test us on it. Our next level does not have the Double Cherry in it whatsoever, which is fine, I guess, because the Double Cherry isn't something that you see tons of. So it's just something you need to keep in the back of your head, where something like the touchstones appear a lot more, so it's important that they immediately promote mastery of it. I haven't mentioned these other guys that look like they're plucks for vegetables, but they're actually enemies that move around underground. Very similar to, say, the fake question blocks in Mario 3, a very similar mechanic, except they can't actually hurt you. So you need to chase after them and pluck them, and then usually they give you a gem as a reward, but not all the time. Sometimes it's a power-up, sometimes it's other stuff. But I particularly like that one because it ran through the wall. I mean, that doesn't really make any sense, but it ran through the wall onto the other side, so you had to use both toads together in order to do it. And one thing I should mention about the double cherry too is a lot of times when you have clones or something like that, you're usually controlling one, but the other one kind of follows. But that's not how it works with the double cherry. Both clones are equally legit. So if one gets hit, then the other one survives. It's not like there's one that if that one gets hit, oh, well then that time you're dead. Both of them are equally legitimate. They're both Toad at the same time. So that's worth noting. I'm heading back here because the secondary objective for this is to get 70 coins, and I don't have 70 coins, so I was thinking for a minute, oh no, to go back and get 10 more coins, but the reality is that there are no more coins in this level. So this confused me for a minute, but the fact is, we'll see this in a second, when you clear the level, the clone actually is worth 10 coins if you keep him alive, and we need him to beat the level, so obviously we get the free 10 coins right there. I kind of think this is somewhat cheap to some ways, because if you know what the objective is, then you really wouldn't know to do that. But at the same time, it's not like you know the objectives before you go into the level anyway for the first time, so you're gonna at least see the clone give you 10 coins once. So you see it and then you go get 70 coins. Let's say you do that right after beating the level, then I guess it's more than fair, but if you go and get the challenges later, it might throw you off a bit. So our next level here is a level I really like, mostly for the secondary objective, but we'll get there in a minute. Either way, this level really hammers down the Shy Guys, which were introduced earlier, obviously, but now it really tests you on that mechanic. So, I mean, yeah, it wasn't the level right after, but they're enemies, and they're much less emphasized than, say, other things in Captain Toad. So I don't think emphasizing this mechanic was quite as important as emphasizing something like, say, the touchstones in level 3, and then immediately have them in level 4. This also introduces the spin wheel for the very first time, but it only does one thing, which is rotate that platform. So it doesn't really introduce how the mechanic fully works, it just says, hey, do this thing, and you're like, okay. I think it would have been better to have a level fully focused on the spin wheels first, before you fully implement them into a level like this. But either way, I think to some degree, they just kind of made the levels, and then just figured out the order from them later. Kind of like how when you make an album, it's not like you're going to, for the most part anyway, you're not going to focus on the big picture until you have all your songs written, and then you decide how can you optimize those songs in such a way that it makes a better big picture. Same thing, you're making the levels, you're making these floating cuboids, you make all the levels, and you're like, okay, well, how do these all fit together in the bigger picture? So are there some possible better orderings of levels? Maybe, but for the most part, it's not a huge deal. Nothing worth really complaining about anyway, like, as a major issue of the game. Either way, our secondary objective, I'll get into it now a little bit, is slipping past the Shy Guys. And what that means is that like I said, the Shy Guys notice you when they see you. So, our goal for our secondary objective is for them not to notice us. And the reason why I'm not doing that at the same time is because it's really hard when you're trying to get all these other collectibles, especially right here, when you have to get an axe and break through the blocks to visit Blue Toad in order to get another gem. So that would make it pretty hard, and it's the same with other gems that are more out of the way. So that's why I'm running through the level twice. And it also goes to show that you can also wing it, you know, with Shy Guys. So even if they notice you, it's not like you're screwed. It's not like Metal Gear, where it's like, oh no, your whole, like, you know, your whole codec is broken. You have to make sure you stay in stealth for a long time, and then eventually they'll stop noticing you. Nah, they give up pretty quick, and even so, you can run away from them pretty well. It's not like they can immediately fire and kill you, because that would be both very dark for a Mario game, Shy Guys having guns, but debatably too difficult for what could be considered more of a children's game. But really, I mean, I feel like the term children's game is very derogatory, because just because a game can be accessible to both kids and adults doesn't mean it's any worse, and in a lot of cases it means it's better, and that's why I think games like the Mario games really do stand the test of time, where a lot of other games that focus more on mature themes only last a certain amount of time. say you are in your early 20s or maybe late teens, or, you know, if it's Call of Duty when you're 12, and you enjoy the game wholeheartedly, but you run out of things pretty quickly because it not only is it somewhat mindless to just shoot a bunch of things, but it's also, I guess, less developed and less clever, because all of those shooter games, you're just shooting things. Doesn't mean they can't be clever, and it doesn't mean there aren't good shooter games out there, but I do feel like a lot of the more immature games, I guess you could say, are a lot of times the better ones, because they do cater towards everyone, you know, whether you're 5 or you're 50. Either way, slipping past the Shy Guys is much harder than it's made out to be. And that's mostly because of the fact that, yeah, it's a stealth thing thrown into a puzzle game. You have to really be careful with the Shy Guys, because if they do see you, then you basically fail the objective. And you can't even kill them either, because the goal isn't to not get seen by the Shy Guys. The goal is to slip past them, meaning you can't kill them either. So it really does go all out with mastery of how the Shy Guys AI works, which is very interesting, to say the least. It's also worth noting that their vision is very limited, and you figure that out as you play the game a bit more. But the reason why they're very limited, and it works. And in games like, say, Metal Gear Solid 1, the guard's vision was very limited, but when you go back and play it now, it kind of feels weird, because it's like, oh, come on, he can see further than that, he's just a normal guy. And there are even guards in Metal Gear Solid, right, that, like, attract your footprints that you left in the snow. So, it's interesting to say that, that the guards could only see so far, but the Shy Guys have a perfect excuse for it, and that's their masks, which is something that we've seen all throughout their existence as Mario enemies since Super Mario Bros. 2, but now the masks actually have a purpose, so they repurposed something that was more than just normally a visual thing to be something completely different, and works so well in the game without even making a new enemy or changing the enemy at all, which is very impressive, so props to Nintendo for that. Now it's time for Spin Wheel Library, which fully develops the spin wheel, but it's interesting because, unlike with the touchstones, this isn't the introduction of the spin wheel, because we saw it before, but this is the level where you would think it would be introduced, so I'm going to treat it like it's a formal introduction to it, because it does develop it a bit more, I would say, but I think it would have been better to see this level first, and then maybe the previous level, or maybe the level, a level that comes later that further develops the spin wheel. Either way, we're underneath here, we got a little reward, but I do want to talk not about the spin wheel itself, but rather about the gamepad, because both the spin wheel and the touchstones both require the gamepad to be used. You touch the touchstones on the gamepad, or in the case of the spin wheel, when you stand on the platform where the spin wheel is, you move it on the gamepad. And it kind of brings up a little problem with Captain Toad, and it's a problem for many Wii U games, so I can't really blame them for this. It's that when you have a second screen in your hand from the TV, you're constantly shifting your view, and it's not as cohesive as something like the DS, where you can see both screens at the same time. And I think that's a major flaw with the Wii U. The gamepad's neat, but I don't think it works as well as something like the DS. And the problem here is that, yeah, there is this beautiful view on the TV, but you don't look at it a lot, because you have to do all these things on the gamepad, especially the more touchstone or spin wheel heavy levels. It's kind of annoying and to look up at the TV and then back down at the gamepad all the time, and it's a shame because the gamepad only has, you know, 240p standard definition resolution when the game is pretty beautiful. I'm not saying it's the best looking Wii game, but you know, it's pretty beautiful, and so you miss out on that because you're looking at your low resolution gamepad to solve those puzzles, and I really do think it's a shame, and it's also the case in a game like Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, especially when that game basically always has you looking at the gamepad. So at that point, then what's the point of even having a TV, or why is it even a Wii U game? Why can't it be a portable game that you can bring with you anywhere if you're not even looking at the TV anyway? And it's a very major dilemma. Either way, now we're at a bonus area, and these occasionally show up. They fill up other pages, so you have to complete them before you can go and replay other levels if you want to get a secondary objective. But you have a choice between the pickaxe one and the double cherry one. So the pickaxe one is my preferred one, actually, but the double cherry one is equally as valid. They both just get you a ton of coins, and then you can get some lives as a result of getting the coins. It rounds up, so if you have, I believe, any more than 200 coins, actually, it does give you the third life, which is pretty nice. It's time for level 8 Minecart Tunnel Throwdown, which introduces yet another mechanic. Like I said, I'm kind of surprised this is after the spin wheel level, but at the same time, I'm also surprised the spin wheel level was after a level that introduced the spin wheel. But hey, whatever, it works. This is the only time, actually, going back to the gamepad, where there's different views on the gamepad and the TV. I can't record my gamepad screen, I don't have the capability to do that, so we'll settle for the TV. And really, the gamepad screen isn't overly exciting, but it's the thing you have to look at in order to play this well, because it shows a first-person perspective of Captain Toad, so that way you can throw the turnips at whatever you need to do. Here, you're just on the TV. It's mostly, I guess, for spectators, but this isn't really a game designed for spectators, so it's kind of weird that exists. Like I said, it's kind of interesting why this is on the Wii U, along with many other Wii U games, when it relies so heavily on something that isn't on the TV. I guess that's the main issue with the Wii U, and why people were confused about it to begin with. But either way, it is a nice change of pace having this minecart level, which is much more action-heavy than your puzzle levels. And I do think it's a nice change of pace, especially when you can get stumped on some levels, even though this isn't a very thinky puzzle game. It's definitely more action-based than most puzzle games, but it still is a nice change of pace. I also like our secondary objective for this level, which was to kill all the Parabiddy buds, because it promotes mastery of something that they just introduced. So you have to kill every enemy, which is like, whoa, I don't even know how to aim this thing yet. So now you have to promote mastery of it. And it isn't really that hard. There are certainly harder challenges with the minecarts that show up later on, but it's still really nice. So I would say it's a really neat secondary challenge, and I like how the secondary challenges are there because they do promote mastery like that, which is something that you don't see necessarily in other levels. Either way, this is the level I was expecting to follow the spin wheel level, and I really don't know why the Slipping Past the Shy Guys level did have a spin wheel to begin with. It really didn't need it, and it kind of ruined the design of introducing something new and then immediately testing you on it, because this is the good test for it. Because while this first spin wheel just rotates some platforms, you're going to see in a second as we go up here that the second spin wheel actually rotates the cannons that have the bullet bills. The cannon's facing us to start, which means that we have to figure out what to do. We're like, oh, there's a spin wheel, we need to immediately rotate that. So it's promoting that more fast-paced level of thinking. And then we also have to shoot the cannons way over there in order to clear those blocks, which didn't really expect that, but you have to think about it. So you need to look more about your environment now, once again promoting the camera a bit more, but also looking beyond just what your character is doing right in front of you. So once again, it has that more slow melodical approach that most Mario games don't have, and what makes Captain Toad different than that. Either way, we have our third rotating one over here, which probably is the thing that confuses me the most, because with the spin wheels, what happens is it locks the platforms in at 90 degrees. So if you let go, it would fall into the closest, 90-degree rotation. But here, in order to clear these blocks, the only way I can see to do it is to arbitrarily hold the spin wheel in a 45-degree-ish location. And I don't get why that's there, because it's not really something that's used later on, and it just kind of seems like, I don't know, like a challenge that shouldn't be there. It doesn't feel genuine, is the best way to put it. So I really don't know why it's here, and I don't know what, I don't know, I mean, I hate to say what were they thinking, but what were they thinking, We're going to go in this little tunnel here, which will lead us to our last spin wheel, which actually rotates the platform we initially started on. In order to get our gold mushroom this time, we actually need to rotate it a bit differently than you would think, because you already see the star there, but you need to rotate it halfway in order to get the gold mushroom, which is our secondary objective. And with that, that's it for this level, actually. That wasn't too bad. I can't complain. But with that, it's time for our 10th level, or our last level for today, actually, which is the boss level of this first section, which is like, whoa, I wouldn't expect a puzzle game to have bosses, but I mean, there are a lot of puzzle platformers that do, so I guess it makes sense, and after all, Wingo does have Toadette, so you would expect us to eventually fight him, if you want any sort of satisfaction, I guess. And yes, we will be fighting Wingo. Either way, This boss is not Wingo. In fact, it's the Pyropuff King, whose name is Dragodon, so we'll refer to him by his name, because I'm sure he would love for us to do that. I love his roar. Like you would think he would be really intimidating, but he's not, because it sounds so derpy. And I think that's the point, because it's a charming game. It's kind of silly in its execution, and I don't mean that in any derogatory way. It's just supposed to be kind of cute and silly. So the fact that your first boss is just kind of this doofus who just breathes fire at you, like, I don't know, I find it really funny instead of something overly intimidating, and I think that works a lot better here. And this isn't our traditional boss battle. Like, the only way you would defeat enemies normally in the game would be to throw vegetables at them, or to just coincidentally land on top of them if you fall from a higher platform. And there are no vegetables to throw at this guy. So, I mean, I guess process of elimination leads you to believe of how we will be killing this guy, but it's a bit differently from how you might expect. Either way, the whole gimmick here is staying behind cover, something that usually would be reserved for shooter games a la Gears of War, but hey, it works here too, even without a gun. Nintendo power, not the magazine. Either way, our secondary objective is to get 45 coins, so we actually do have to go out of our way, like we did just a bit ago there, to get all the coins that we need in order to clear this. There aren't more than 45 coins in the level, so we don't need to get every single individual coin, but hey, we do need to get a lot of them, so better be careful about that. This is where the bulk of our coins are going to come from, but we need one more, so there were some coins I previously skipped, but it is pretty tight, so you do need to get most of them, so that is a deal. And there's also another pluck patch here if you missed some, so about, 20 coins over-ish, well, more like 15 actually. The first ladder, this ladder here is how we're going to defeat him. So we're not actually going to fall on top of him. The platform itself is going to fall on top of him, which I really like because, I mean, Dragodon doesn't have anything we really need. We just want this treasure at the top, right? So it's neat that Captain Toad's the unlikely hero. He's not deliberately trying to happily kill anything like in most Mario games, actually. How dark is that? But, we don't even kill him. Like, his eyes are still shifting, his little eyebrows, like, all jittery there. He's our unlikely hero. He just kind of had to defeat him because he's kind of in the way, but hey, he'll be back probably to annoy us a little bit. He's a little bit derpy, so he probably doesn't learn his lesson yet. But Captain Toad's clapping. He did what he needed to do, and now we're going to get our treasure. And with that, I'm going to call it off here, but I hope you stay tuned for the next one, because we're going to keep going on. Obviously, there's a lot of book left before we get to Wingo and rescue Toadette. And there's a lot more of this really neat game design that comes in later on. So I hope you stay tuned for the next one, but for now, I'll catch you later.